Hello and welcome to this special broadcast of Focus on. I'm Kenneth Igbomo. On this episode, we'll be looking at the annual meetings of the African Development Bank. It's the 57th annual meetings and the 48th meeting of the African Development Fund, and quite a lot on the agenda. Climate resilience and a just transition for the continent is what they are going to be talking about. And President Akinwumi Adesina is setting the agenda in this breakfast meeting with media organizations to talk about what the bank is planning to do and the agenda going forward.
Of course, there's no doubt in my mind that Africa is facing a lot of challenges. It's just the way the life is. When you wake up every single morning, there's going to be a challenge in front of you. But we are not deterred by the challenges that Africa faces. We're here today to tell stories of progress about Africa. Let me start with COVID-19 pandemic. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, Africa's economic growth rate declined to its lowest rate that we've had in 20 years, to minus 1.6% in terms of GDP growth rate. Over 29 million people fell into extreme poverty. Just think about that. And 30 million jobs were lost as a consequence of that. Well, those numbers are big numbers, but they pale as far as I'm concerned compared to the lives that were lost. Because we can get people out of poverty. We can get jobs that are lost back, but we cannot bring lives that are gone back. Just tells you the kind of impact that this pandemic had on lives. So it's not just about numbers. It's about the lives that were affected all around the world, not just for us in Africa. But the African Development Bank responded swiftly, as we always do. Our board of directors approved for us a crisis response facility of up to $10 billion to support countries in the midst of this pandemic. We also were very bold, and we are always very bold. We launched a $3 billion social impact bond on the global capital market. At the time that it was launched, it was the largest ever in world history US dollar-denominated social bond. Because for us, we cannot joke with the lives of Africa, of Africans. Ladies and gentlemen, we delivered for Africa. According to this year's annual Development Effectiveness Report, our rapid COVID-19 response facility helped to train 130,000 health workers. It provided social protection for over 30 million vulnerable households. It expanded support, in particular critically needed advisory support, business advisory support, for 300,000 small and medium-sized enterprises that were all badly affected by this pandemic. But things are looking up now. Africa's real GDP growth rebounded to 6.9% in 2022. But just when we thought everything was looking up, then Russia invaded Ukraine. Russia's war in Ukraine has led to new challenges on top of already existing challenges for us. It's led to high energy prices. It's led to high fertilizer prices that have actually increased by more than 300%. It has disrupted food imports, especially for African countries. Well, we are all here this morning for this breakfast. I'm not sure how long we all can continue to eat cheap food. And I'm being very frank with you. As a result of this war. Because Africa, 30 million metric tons of food, of wheat and of maize, will no longer be coming from Russia or from Ukraine. That's imported by Africa. That's a lot of food. So Africa right now faces a looming food crisis as a result of this Russian war in Ukraine. Russia is far from here. Ukraine is far from here. The impacts of it are right here. Again, in the middle of all of that, the African Development Bank stepped up, and we are showing incredible leadership to tackle this new challenge and to ensure that Africa does not experience a looming food crisis. I am not scared of food crisis. When I was Minister of Agriculture in Nigeria, in 2012, Nigeria experienced its worst flood in its history. I remember at the time, I used to be going to my office, and I would look at the newspapers on my way. My security guard would say, "Sir, please look at the newspapers. They say Nigeria is going to have a food crisis, and there's going to be famine for food in Nigeria." Some of you journalists are here. You're from Nigeria. Can I see your hand if you're from Nigeria? Yes. You remember I was the only person in the entire country that said Nigeria will not have a food crisis. It wasn't because of arrogance. It wasn't because of not taking it seriously. It's because to deal with anything that is a crisis, you must have a plan. All I'm trying to say to you is this. We were not ready when we had COVID-19. We didn't have the technology. We didn't have the vaccines. We didn't have the personal protective equipment. We didn't have anything. But for agriculture, for food, we are fully ready. Africa will not have a food crisis. Africa does not need bowls in hand. Africa needs seeds in the ground. Africa should not and will not be begging for food. Africa will produce its own food. For there is no dignity in begging for food. And that's why the African Development Bank and the African Union Commission developed the Africa Emergency Food Production Plan. The plan will provide 20 million farmers with improved seeds and fertilizers to produce 38 million metric tons of food. And that 38 million metric tons of food is divided as follows, because precision matters. There will be 11 million metric tons of wheat. There will be 18 million metric tons of maize. There will be 6 million metric tons of rice. And there will be 2.5 million metric tons of soybeans. Total value of all the food that will be produced is $12 billion US. And as my governor, Ken Ofori-Atta, said, being a minister of finance, very quick to look at leverage ratio. When I came here and I talked to him, he said, "You're going to spend how much?" I said, "We will spend for this plan $1.5 billion US. That's how much we're going to spend." He said, "But you're going to produce $12 billion worth of food." Is there a mathematician here? What leverage is that? That is an incredible leverage. And that's what we have to do. So again, let me say, the African Development Bank delivered for Africa. Now you may ask, why am I again so confident that we will be able to avoid a looming food crisis apart from what I told you? It is because our plan is based on the incredibly successful work of the African Development Bank through its high five on Feed Africa. You will remember our plan is to light up and empower Africa, to feed Africa, to industrialize Africa, to integrate Africa, and to improve the quality of life of the people of Africa. That's the high five strategy of the bank. Well, Feed Africa is the one we're talking about this morning. Let me share some things with you. Over the past 6 years that we have been doing the Feed Africa strategy of the bank, our work has provided 76 million farmers with improved agricultural technologies. The bank has also been implementing a very successful program that we call Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation, TAAT. Here are some of the success stories that gives us the confidence, because we're not moonlighting in agriculture. We know exactly what we're doing. Of course, for many reasons, I myself, as president of the bank, I have more than 35 years of experience in agriculture. I've been Minister of Agriculture for Africa's largest country. I'm also a 2017 World Food Prize winner, which is the equivalent of the Nobel Prize. But I'm also the president of the African Development Bank. So when you tell me anything about agriculture, I say, bring it on. Let me share with you some of our successes. TAT delivered climate-smart seeds so far in just 2 years for 12 million farmers in 27 countries in Africa in just 2 years. We delivered water-efficient maize for 5.6 million households in East Africa when the area was hit with drought in 2018. The bank was there, 5.6 million households getting water-efficient maize. And just so that you know, the water-efficient maize that I'm talking about, I actually helped to finance it when I was in Rockefeller Foundation in the year 2000 to 2002, based in Harare, Zimbabwe. So when the drought hit East Africa in 2018, the technology was there, sitting on the shelf. It was there. It's been there for a long time. We took it, and we gave it to 5.6 million households. That's why, by the way, you never found any problem with food security in East Africa, because the technology was there. In Sudan, we provided the government of Sudan with 65,000 metric tons of certified seed of heat-tolerant wheat. How many of you like bread? Everybody likes bread. Bread, you make it from wheat. Of course, but I don't believe that when God said man shall not live by bread alone, I don't think God meant wheat bread. Because you can make it from cassava flour and everything else. But we provided Sudan with 65,000 metric tons of certified seed. Just to give you an example of what that means, an Airbus A380 aircraft is the largest commercial plane, passenger plane. Passengers, the cargo, and the fuel is 98.4 metric tons. So when I say 65,000 metric tons, you're thinking about almost 666 Airbus 380 aircraft parked on a landing strip, just to give you an idea of how much support we provided for Sudan. In 2 years, Sudan became self-sufficient. They reduced their wheat import by 50%. Abdul, can you stand up? You used to work in Sudan. Clap for him also. We did the same in Ethiopia. We provided 61,000 metric tons of certified seed of wheat, heat-tolerant wheat, to farmers in Ethiopia. They cultivated it on 5,000 hectares in 2018. They started. By 2020, 2021, they had cultivated it on 167,000 hectares. And by 2021, 2022, they had cultivated it on 400,000 hectares. 5,000, 167,000, 400,000. So when I went to Ethiopia last week, was it last week? Oh, yeah. And I was very delighted and humbled to be given an honorary doctorate by the Addis Ababa University. I was sitting with Dr. Abdul Kamara in front of the Prime Minister Abe. And I was so excited to share with him that he had reached 400,000 hectares. He leaned forward, looking at me so intently, as if trying to pierce right through my soul. I was wondering why he was doing that. And then he said to me, "Have you finished?" I said, "Yes, I have finished." He told me, and I will quote what he said. "President, African Development Bank, Ethiopia's wheat production is now on 650,000, not 400,000 hectares." You can clap for them. He said we harvested 2.6 million metric tons of wheat. And he said Ethiopia did not import wheat this year. As you know, the climate change is an ever-present existential threat to Africa. From droughts, floods, and cyclones, extreme weather patterns are devastating African countries. 9 out of 10 of the most vulnerable countries to climate change in Africa, in the world, are in Africa. In fact, Africa is the second most vulnerable region in the world to climate change. As I look at South Africa with what happened in KwaZulu-Natal, and as I see what happened to the Sahel, I see what happened in the Horn of Africa, and I see what happened in Mozambique and in Madagascar recently. My assistant is from Madagascar. Then I realized bridges, land, washed away, economies destroyed. The point I want to make is a very simple point. Climate change is killing Africa. Annually, Africa loses $7 to $15 billion a year just due to climate change. And that will rise to $50 billion a year by 2040. But we didn't cause climate change. Africa's contribution to climate change is no more than 4% of greenhouse gas emissions. But we suffer disproportionately from the negative consequences of it. To be able to finance climate change, financing needs for Africa will be $1.6 trillion between 2020 and 2030. $1.6 trillion. However, Africa is not getting enough resources to tackle climate change. Africa gets only 3% of the global climate finance. Climate financing mobilized by the world globally falls short of Africa's needs. by $100 to $127 billion per year between 2020 and 2030. As per the Paris Agreement, African countries are committed to reducing their carbon emissions through energy transitions. Africa has abundant energy resources, including solar, hydro, geothermal, and also wind. The African Development Bank is spearheading investments in renewable energy. And guess what? 85% of all the African Development Bank's investment in energy is in renewable energy. The African Development Bank financed the new Ouarzazate in Morocco. Is there anybody here from Morocco? Ah, madame, ça va? Vous connaissez très bien le nous Ouarzazate, non? C'est nous qui avons financé ça, on est vraiment très fiers de ça. Vous pouvez applaudir pour vous-même, pour nous-mêmes. C'est formidable ce que Sa Majesté a fait là-bas. Je suis très fier de lui et pour son engagement constant sur l'énergie renouvelable. Je dois vous dire aussi que, bon, nous avons aussi investi au Kenya avec le lac Turkana. Le lac Turkana, c'est on dit pour wind, c'est quoi? Éolienne. Les centrales éoliennes, les plus larges dans l'Afrique subsaharienne. Et donc, je vous parle aujourd'hui, nous avons commencé le travail d'investir 20 milliards de dollars sur ce que nous appelons de la désert à l'énergie. De la désert à l'énergie. I don't mean desert. I mean desert to power. $20 billion investment, that is in the Sahel. And it will produce electricity 10,000 megawatts. That will make it the largest solar zone in the world. We've already started, we're not just talking. We've started in Burkina Faso with a project called Yellen. You can stand up, you are the man. We've started in Chad with what is called? Jeremiah. Okay, you are also the DG, so stand up. And we started in Mali with what is called Segu. Voila. God loves Africa. But we must use the resources that God gives us very, very well. And sunshine is one that we are going to use a lot better. And this desert of power that I mentioned will allow electricity, provide electricity for 250 million people, right? 250 million people, from grid to off-grid and mini-grid. So as we talk about just energy transition throughout this week, there's no doubt we must drive towards zero emissions. At the African Development Bank, we no longer finance coal, and we will not finance coal anymore. That was a position that I took, but it is now part of our policy, board-approved policy on climate change and green growth. That is approved by the bank. But Africa, as it does energy transitions, which we'll be hearing about all of this week, I want to make certain things clear. First is that renewables alone cannot power Africa. And neither can it power any part of the world because of the intermittency of power. You need stable grid system. Therefore, you must have access to power. You must be able to afford power. You must have security of power. And you must have stability of energy systems. The point I'm making is this. natural gas must remain a fundamental part of the energy system for Africa because we need stable energy systems. And we must create jobs, and we need industries. Africa cannot be poor in an environmentally sustainable manner. We also want to be rich. Our people deserve that. So to support Africa to do this, the bank, we are working with South Africa, with the G7 countries. You'll hear more about it this week on just energy transition for South Africa. My senior vice president is here. She's leading our team and vice president of power on that. But we realize our people must have stable energy systems. The African Development Bank on climate change, we have doubled our finance for climate to $25 billion by 2025. We've also gotten together with the Global Center on Adaptation that is chaired by the former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, and our goal is to mobilize $25 billion for climate adaptation for Africa. But even with our best efforts, it's not enough. It's not enough. Developed countries promise to provide developing countries with $100 billion a year to allow them to adapt to climate change. But this year, the African Development Fund will be 50 years. And therefore, as low-income countries are going through debt, they are going through insecurity, they are going through more poverty, they are going through climate change, they need more resources. I don't want to be president of an African Development Bank that leads to bifurcation of growth opportunities between countries. The low-income countries, the fragile states, they deserve support to have infrastructure, water, sanitation, be able to stabilize their economy and participate effectively in the growth process. So when you see me and my vice presidents passionate about African Development Fund, it's for only one reason. No country should be left behind.
Quite a lot put on the agenda there by President Akinwumi Adesina. 1.6 trillion, the amount he put that will be needed to tackle climate change on the continent. He also spoke about the approval of 1.5 billion to tackle the looming food crisis on the continent. A lot to look forward to in the coming days in the annual meetings of the African Development Bank. I'm Kenneth Igbomo. Watch this space.